Lewis Hamilton, born in UK, 1985, is a seven-time Formula One world champion driver who competes for the Mercedes-AMG F1 Petronas team. He is the most successful British driver of all time. He holds multiple absolute records, such as most points for most pole positions. Hamilton is the one who has the best records since the Turbo era began in 2014. The Englishman's talented driving and the superiority of Mercedes-AMGs have led to one of the most successful duos in history. Lewis has not lost aggressiveness over time, but he has gained mental strength and consistency. His personal growth earns him the recognition of colleagues and experts, who point him out as one of the great talents of his generation. From humble origins, Lewis Hamilton began karting thanks to the efforts of his father, Anthony, who financed his beginnings through overtime as a London Underground worker. The young promise made his way through the training categories by accumulating successes and trophies. Champion of the Super 1 British Cadet, he won the McLaren Mercedes Champions of the Future in 1996 and repeated the result in 1997. That was the awards ceremony. Ron Dennis approached him and announced that he wanted to have him for the McLaren team. Formula One. This close relationship, forged when the driver was still 13 years old, explains the friendship that united them when Lewis reached the premier category. Hamilton continued his journey in karting as a member of the Woking Young Drivers program, until reaching and conquering the prestigious Italian Formula E. Graduated in karts, Lewis took the next step in his career by making the jump to single-seaters in the Winter Series of the British Formula Renault. Fifth in his first year and third in his second, the Englishman achieved a solid fifth place in the European Championship before winning the 2003 British Championship with authority, with a whopping 10 wins out of a possible 15. The Formula 3 Euroseries was the next step in its formation. He met all expectations by becoming champion in his second season. In the first, he succumbed to what would be his teammate at Mercedes, Nico Rosberg. The conquest of Formula 3 opened the doors to the prelude to the premier category, GP2, where he exploited all his potential and took over the title with 5 victories in his debut. He debuted in Formula 1 in the 2007 season with McLaren MP422. 2023, Mercedes. Unlike the previous year, in which he had to deal with experimental tests in the first races, Hamilton found consistency from the first race. The Briton started with 2 fifth places before setting the new record, with 17 consecutive seasons on the podium with a second place in Australia. That joy in Melbourne was quite anecdotal, the only one with a W14 without pontoons, with which he himself knew from the filming day in February that he would not win the World Cup. More points in Baku, Miami and Monaco gave way to the great joy of Mercedes in the first half of 2023 with the double podium in the Spanish GP, with Hamilton second and George Russell third. The change in concept allowed Hamilton to find more rhythm, especially on one lap, and begin to distance himself from Russell in the internal duel between teammates. The young Briton lost many points with errors in Monaco and Canada, where Hamilton returned to the podium with a third place after battling for many laps with one of his great rivals in 2023, Fernando Alonso. Mercedes' step forward was evident, and Hamilton confirmed it with another podium at Silverstone, the 10th in the road. On Saturday in Hungary, his best moment of the season would come, with pole, the only one, after beating Max Verstappen by 3 thousandths. However, the next day it didn't go well and he couldn't get past 4th place. With another 4th place in Belgium before the holidays and 6th in Zandvoort and Monza, Hamilton began to have 3rd position in the World Cup within reach against Alonso, who was beginning to suffer from Aston Martin's drop in performance. With the podium in Singapore, Lewis reached that place that he would not let go of until the end of the year. The first big mistake came in Qatar, where he was left out of the race in the same start after taking too many risks and colliding with his teammate. The positive thing is that Lewis was able to make amends 2 weeks later with a great performance in Austin, with a second place in the sprint and another in the race, close to victory. However, he would end up being disqualified from the latter due to irregularities in the wooden planks. Hamilton vindicated himself in Mexico with a great comeback to get on the podium for the 6th and last time all year. The last 3 events in Brazil, Las Vegas and Abu Dhabi were much more complicated, although the points he added were enough to finish the year 3rd in the Drivers' World Championship, the best outside of Red Bull, and to give Mercedes 2nd place in the Constructors' Championship. On August 31, Hamilton's renewal with Mercedes for 2 more years was announced, until the end of 2025, that is, until the current regulations end. The Star brand opts for continuity after a season in which they went from less to more, and seeing how both parties have saved this year, there are high hopes for the next after having better understood their problems. 2013, Mercedes. Lewis Hamilton left everyone speechless in 2013. The Briton fled from a McLaren in free fall to join a booming Mercedes that had nothing to do with that team that once suffered in the middle of the classification, and he soon realized that he had hit a nail on the head with his decision. But the Englishman did not expect to capitalize on results since his arrival in Brackley, quite the opposite. Lewis was prepared to wait patiently for the fruit of a long-term partnership that, fortunately for him, turned out to be more fruitful than expected. Hamilton achieved a single victory in 2013, in Hungary, but he took multiple podiums throughout the entire competition. He closed the year as the 4th best driver in the World Championship with a whopping 189 points to his name. Proof of the enormous improvement of the Silver Arrows is the fact that in 2012 Schumacher only added 49 figures. 2012, McLaren. Lewis Hamilton's 2012 season started with better feelings than the previous ones. 2 poles at the start of the year and 3 more consecutive podiums were received as an injection of hope that McLaren, as it seemed that they had finally hit the key to success with the MP427. And they did, indeed. Partially. Those from Woking shined. They created the fastest car of the year, the most competitive, the model to imitate, but they could not transfer their initial superiority to the classification, and that took its toll on them in the second half of the campaign, when they were trapped by their rivals and were left behind, separated from the fight for the title. In the end, Lewis Hamilton had to settle for a 4th place in the final classification, which was exasperating for him, as he longed for a speed and freedom that those from Woking did not offer him. His professional future was the epicenter of endless rumors until, finally, what would have been unthinkable a few months earlier was confirmed. The McLaren star would leave the team at the end of the year to join the ranks of Mercedes in 2013. Decision intelligent. To what extent did the monetary factor influence your final will? Be that as it may, the Englishman found something in the Brackley project that the Woking team did not offer him: ambition and the real possibility of fighting for a championship again. Hamilton said goodbye to his stay in Martin with Marsh's team with victory in the United States, the first Grand Prix hosted at the brand new Circuit of the Americas, and would have repeated his victory in Sao Paulo had it not been for a collision with Nico Force India. Hulkenberg. Lewis put an end to his time as a McLaren driver to the disbelief of many, but aware at all times that an exciting future awaited him at that new moment in his professional career. 2007, McLaren. Lewis Hamilton lived one of the most impressive and famous debuts in the modern history of Formula One. From newcomer to real contender for the championship, the Briton displayed from the first moment a tenacity on the track that accompanied him the rest of his career, and which made him, therefore, one of the most brilliant talents of his generation. Hamilton's emergence heralded the birth of a new star. 9 podiums in the first 9 races, with 2 victories included, showed the world that the Englishman was not a McLaren to be anyone's squire, but that he drove to satisfy his hunger of successes. The relationship between the Englishman and his teammate, Fernando Alonso, was tense, to the point that the Asturian opted to leave the team at the end of the campaign and return to Flavio Briatore's Renault. The clashes between both personalities began in Monaco, where Lewis expressed his discomfort with some strategic decisions by those from Woking that the FIA investigated to verify that they had not acted with favoritism towards Fernando, but if a scuffle stands out above the rest, that it is none other than that of Hungary, a Grand Prix that will go down in history for the obstruction that the Spaniard did to the Briton in order to harm his options for pole position. All in all, Lewis Hamilton displayed inherent and impeccable speed, but at the same time an inexperience that only time could correct. In the last race, for example, he ruined his chances in the World Championship by inadvertently activating the pit lane speed limiter in the middle of the Interlagos Straight, a fact that meant he lost many position.